But this is my view. This is the title of a paper I wrote in 1994 that got me into an enormous amount of trouble. So I'm going to start just by saying a word or two about how you can make a difference. First of all, I've written a book about this. So this is a semi-technical book, by which I mean it is low on jargon. There is not much in the way of serious technical jargon in this book, but it definitely cuts no corners. It is extremely detailed. Every single one of those 7 general approaches to fixing aspects of aging that I summarized earlier on is given a whole chapter's worth in this book. There's a great deal there. I recommend you to get the paperback edition, not only because it's a couple of dollars cheaper, but because it came out a year later. And in those 12 months, so much happened in terms of progress in actually implementing all of these things that we had to write an entire new chapter just to cover 1 year of progress. There's an afterword in there that is very well worth reading, and I recommend you the paperback edition. Obviously, we have a website, we have contact information. We are a charity. So if there are any billionaires in the audience, then please see me later. But of course, there's a lot more that people can do than simply throw money at us. There's a lot of things that we'd like done, and for your benefit as medics, of course, the big thing I want to emphasize is that this is your future. You will be treating elderly people more than anybody else will, more than treating anybody else when you qualify and when you get proper jobs. And the way you'll be treating them is by medicine of the future, not medicine of the present. And this is the type of medicine that you will be implementing on those people. So the sooner you become expert on where this is going, the better. And I'll stop there and I'll be happy to take questions. And there's a question at the back. Speak up.
I'm surprised.
I can't hear a word. Shout.
I'm surprised you haven't addressed in your talk, because I'm sure many people ask for this. We live in a world that doesn't have enough resources for the people we have right now. And so if everyone lives to 1,000, how will the world even support us?
Yeah, okay, so the question for those who didn't hear is, hang on, overpopulation, resources, the obvious question. Now, of course, the reason I didn't address this significantly in my talk today was because I'm speaking to a medical audience and I wanted to make sure that you hear about the how rather than spending an hour talking about the why. But I could perfectly well stand up here and give another talk for the next hour talking about the why this is a good idea. I won't do that. What I'll do is give you a summary of my answer to your question. First, and I'm going to preempt things by giving a sort of answer to all of the various questions that some of you may be thinking about with regard to the social context of all of this. Won't dictators live forever? How will we pay the pensions? Wouldn't it be boring? All those things like that. But then I have 2 sorts of answer. Okay, first of all, I have specific answers. For each of these questions, I do not regard the question as stupid by any means. These questions are extraordinarily important, and the more that we think about them now, the more that we will be able to forward plan, so to speak, to minimize the risks that might result when we enter a post-aging world. So, for example, in the case of the risk of overpopulation, we need to evaluate that risk properly. We shouldn't just say, well, obviously there will be critical overpopulation, therefore let's not go there. What we should actually look at is what's happening in the world today. And of course we all know that the average woman is having fewer and fewer children as time goes on in all countries that are becoming wealthy with female emancipation and education, and that by the time these therapies are in danger of actually happening, will also apply, of course, to the biggest countries in the world, China and India, where we're seeing fertility rates coming down very fast already. That's pretty good news. What's even better news is, one thing we're going to fix here is menopause. Now, some of you may be thinking, oh dear, I don't like the sound of having periods every month for 500 years, but the fact is that another thing is happening in the Western world today, which is not only that are women having fewer children, they're having them later. And of course that indicates simply they've got other things they'd like to do with their time before they do this terribly time-consuming thing. And of course it's only an average I'm talking about here, but that's we're talking a population problem, so the averages are what matter. Now, if there's no deadline anymore, if it's not, why should women have children in their 30s or early 40s now? The reason they do it, of course, is because it's then or never. And if that's no longer true, then I think it seems pretty clear, it's pretty obvious inference that we're going to be very likely to see women delaying having their first child by another decade and another decade. And it turns out, if you do the mathematics on this, that matters a great deal more for the trajectory of global population than the total number of children that a woman has during their lifetime overall. Because obviously that's where the exponent comes. You get the first child has their own first child and so on. So that's pretty good news. So that's one sort of answer. Again, we're going to go into the actual details and specifics of how we might address particular problems. But here's the general answer that I give, which really covers all of these questions. We have a problem today. Hello, 100,000 people die of aging every day. 150,000 people die each day worldwide of all causes added together. 2/3 of them die of causes that young adults more or less never die of. Okay, in the Western world, obviously, it's much higher. It's something like 90% of all deaths are from aging. I regard that as somewhat a bad thing, and I think anyone in the medical profession should also regard it as something of a shame. And therefore, in order to evaluate whether we should be pursuing this sort of technology, we must apply a sense of proportion to the question. We must ask ourselves, even in the worst possible case, are these prospective problems that we might create by the defeat of aging worse, so bad that they're actually worse than the problem we're fixing? The problem we have today is that we refuse to accept that we have a problem. And when I say we here, of course, I'm talking about the population at large. But people in the medical profession who are faced with the horror of aging every day, that much more frequently and intimately than your average person is, people in the medical profession have a responsibility to suppress that urge to, put it out of their minds. You have a responsibility, you folks, to educate the public, not to let people be just, go silently into that dark night or whatever was said. I'll come back to you in a minute, but another question first.
Concerning your longevity and escape velocity,
Yep.
it's a little bit unfair for you to take examples of recent big expansions, because there's plenty of examples in history where there's been very poor expansion. And you can look at where things have not developed. For instance, the artists of the Renaissance period would be very good today. Shakespeare would be a great playwright today. A lot of musicians would be great today. A violin who was made 100 years ago would be a great violin today. And if you go back to the 1st century, 2nd century, the progress there could be very small. And certainly, people thought of flying before the Wright brothers. That's been very long. And you don't know where you are in history for curing aging.
That's correct.
In the 1st century, where you think that you may be able to develop it. And this aging isn't just one aspect of repair. You have to do many different repairs to fix aging. So why are you so optimistic that in 30 years you'll be in a Learjet when you started with the idea?
Right. So I want to repeat what I said about this, because it's a very important point. I'm absolutely not claiming strong confidence that we're going to have these therapies in time for everyone in this room. What I'm claiming is that we should regard the future of this technology in 2 phases. The first phase is the unpredictable one. The second phase, which is where all this longevity escape velocity thing comes in, is the one that we can be confident about. The examples you gave are not counter-examples to what I just said. You gave examples that are not technology at all, and insofar as you talked about technology, you talked very much about things when they were in that phase 1, when we didn't have the fundamental breakthrough. The stuff about longevity escape velocity is all about when progress can occur as a result of a series of incremental refinements of the breakthrough that's already occurred. That's the key point. Any other questions? All right, go ahead. And please speak loudly, because I can't hear you.
So 2 points. We know that when species have been introduced into continents where they didn't previously exist, they've had a huge impact on the environment and changed the ecosystem. So my question to you is, do you take part of the money that you get for your organization and also study the impact of living longer on the environment?
Sure.
So that both are taken care of at the
So
same time?
of course, you're absolutely. So the question, in case anyone didn't hear, was, species that have been introduced into environments where they didn't exist have disrupted the ecology and had devastating effects in many cases. Wouldn't it be important and responsible for my foundation to address this in respect of the possibility that the human species might have that impact when we didn't have aging anymore? And of course, the human species has obviously had that impact to a great extent worldwide already. And I think you're absolutely right. That's why I've thought about these sorts of questions enough to be able to have given you a rather detailed answer a moment ago. And in terms of actually spending money, it turns out that there are people in the audience, they're over there, who are expert demographers and who are indeed being paid by my foundation to do exactly what you said, to do proper analysis of what the outcome in terms of the global trajectory of population would be, and of course eventually regional population trajectories as well, on various permutations of assumptions about changes in fertility rate, rate of dissemination of technologies, and all those things. One has to start by understanding the nature of the problem,